Alright, so this is the continuation of the project function and nested loops. So in the previous video, we've seen example 0 and also example 1. So like I said, we are going from this example here. We're going to continue from here. So first, let me copy this function prototype and let me open my main.h. Right, then I'm going to paste this here. Right, so paste, then save and exit. Then what does the question says? Let me copy the file name first. See, so vi, open the file. All right, so what's the first thing we need to do after opening the file? We need to say hash, right? We need to include our main.h, which contains our function prototypes, main.h. Then there's the function I'm writing now, right? So copy this and then paste. All right, so this question here says we should write a function that prints 10 times the alphabet in lowercase, followed by a new line. In the previous example here, we just printed the alphabet in lowercase, right? But here, just look at this, we just printed it once in lowercase. But in this case, we are printing it 10 times and also in lowercase. So this is an example of a nested loop. This is going to be a loop within another loop. So I'm going to create two loops for this. The first loop is going to keep track of how many times my A to Z is printed. So it is going to keep track of what? Of the 10 times that the alphabet should be printed. While the second loop is going to what? To print the alphabet itself, just like the way we did here. We created a loop to print this alphabet, but only once, right? But in this case, we are going to need a loop to print the alphabet how many times? 10 times. So I need a loop to iterate from what? From 1 to 10, and also I need a loop to iterate from A to Z. So that's where I'll be able to print A to Z how many times? 10 times. Right? So now the first thing I need if I'm going to create a loop is I need to set the variable in which I'm going to use for my iteration. I'm going to use a while loop, a for loop as well here. So the first thing I would say int I, I'm going to use this for what? For looping over what? 1 to 10, right? And then the next one is I'm going to use char G. Now this is going to be used to loop over the characters, the alphabet. Right? So when you notice this, after this function declaration, I'm leaving a space here to begin my for loop, right? So if you don't leave a space here, Betty will give you an error. So after every declaration, you need to leave an extra space before you begin writing your main code. If I should not leave the space here, let's say I did not leave the space here, I'm definitely going to get a Betty error. So let's do it. So I'll just say for the first thing I need to keep track of is the number of times, right? So for each iteration, I want to print A to Z. So I say for I, I'm starting from where? From 1, right? Or you can say I equals to 0. Anyhow, you can start from 0, but what should be your condition? I'm printing it how many times? 10 times. So it should be I less than what? I less than 10. Why am I using less than 10? Because you know that I'm not going to include 10 in this case because I'm starting from 0. If you count from 0 to 9, that is when you're going to get what? 10. Just count 0, 1, 2, up to 9, you're going to get 10. If you say I less than or equals to 10, it means you are having what? 11. If you want to use I less than or equals to 10, you can simply change this to what? To 1. So this is going to be 1 to 10, right? That way you have 10 numbers, right? 10 digits. So here I need to remove this since I'm starting from 0. Anyhow you do it, it's going to work, right? Then what again? Then I plus plus. So I need to increment. So inside this loop here, right? Inside this for loop, I need to what? I need to create another loop. So it means that for each iteration of I want to print the alphabet A to Z. So now I will say for J equals to what? In lowercase, right? So I need to add this. I'm sure you must have been familiar with this. This is the same example we did. So J less than or equals to Z, right? Then J plus plus. So notice how I'm doing my own. If you are not leaving the space between the equality sign and these characters here and also this and this, Betty will give you an error. So you need to take note of where I'm leaving my spacing. Okay, so now what next? So here inside this for loop, I will just call my putchar. I will just say putchar, and then putchar will print the value of G for me. So all what this is going to do is simply the first iteration for I, which is 0. It will check, is I less than 10? Yes, I is less than 10. That is 0. 0 is less than 10. So it will jump into this loop. We know what this loop is going to do. We've seen how to use this loop in the previous example. So it will jump into this loop because the condition here is true. 0 is less than 10. So when it jump into this loop, it is going to print what? A to Z. right? After printing A to Z, then it will increment the value of I here again. So it increment the value of I is now what? 1. So it will now check, is I less than 10? That is 1 less than 10? Yes, it is true. So it will now jump into this loop again. So this loop will also print A to Z again, from A to Z. You see now we have how many? We have A to Z appearing twice. So it will now increment the value of I again to what? To 2, right? It will check, is 2 less than 10? Yes. So it will jump into this loop again and print what? A to Z. How many times? The third time, because 0, 1, and 2. That's how it will keep going until this condition becomes false, right? So the moment this condition becomes false, it will exit out of this loop. So what are we going to do when it exits out of this loop? We are told that it should follow a new line, and we can only use putchar twice here. So here I will just call putchar for my new line. So I will just say putchar, and then I'll just say /n. So you see with this, I now have what? Putchar, a new line, printed on a new line. Do you get it? So now I have putchar printed on a new line. So let's test this and see. So before that, let's run our Betty. Let's document Betty. So here, right? So what is the function name? Print alphabet, right? Alphabet underscore x10. That's the function name. So let me explain this. Print alphabet, right? Alphabet lowercase 10 times. Let me just do something like this. So it has no return value, right? So I'll just say return, just say 0. So this and this. All right, so let's run Betty on this file. This is to print something. Okay, so it says missing a blank line after declaration. You see, this is what I was telling you. After declaring any variable, right, you need to leave a space. Okay, you need to leave a blank line. If you don't leave a blank line, Betty will give you an error. So as you can see, it was initially like this for loop here. It was initially like this, right? So I need to press enter to give a space here. Do you see? Now I have a space. So let's run Betty again. So as you can see, Betty is now happy with this. So let's create the test file, which we are going to use to test if the function is working correctly. So I will just say vi, that is 2main.c is the name of the test file, right? So I will just paste this here. I don't know why whenever I copy this, I have to add the #I here. All right. So now let's compile the program. So let me copy this. Let's paste. All right, so what's the name of the file? The name of the file is what? 2alphabet x10. Okay, seems like I left something somewhere. No, not Betty. As you can see in my 2main.c, it says I've added an extra character somewhere. So let me fix it. Okay, yeah, here. When you look at this, I added I here. So it's not supposed to be here. All right, so let's compile again. So as you can see, it has been compiled. So let's run the compiled file, which is 2alphabet. So let's run it. Whoa, so as you can see, it is printed, but it is kind of jam-packed in one place. So it seems like our spacing, we've placed our spacing in the wrong place. Sorry. What we are supposed to do here is this putchar here is not supposed to be here, because when you look at this for loop entirely is responsible for what? For printing the alphabet. So after printing A to Z, just look at this. After printing A to Z, move to a new line before incrementing the value of I, right? Before printing the next set of A to Z. So this is where our new line is supposed to be. So putchar here, and then /n. So with this, problem is solved. So let's compile. So let's run the compiled file. So as you can see, we have A to Z. How many times? 10 times. Just count this. You're going to get 10 times. Okay, so now let's move on to the next steps. But before that, don't forget, add, commit, and push to your GitHub repository, and then you can run your checks. If there is any error you're having, you can drop it in the comment section of this video. All right, so this task here, before that, let me copy the function prototype. I like dealing with the prototypes first because I hate opening the main.h all the time. So let me just paste this. I missed an I here. All right. So what's next? We need to create the file, which is this 3islower.c. Copy it. So what's the first thing we need to do? We need to include our main.h because it contains the function prototype in which we are going to work on now. So copy this. So now we begin writing our function. Alright, so the question says we should write a function that checks for lowercase characters. So the function should just check for lowercase character. When you look at this is the return type of the function, and this is what? This is the parameter that the function is taking. It is taking an integer c, right? So we should write a function that checks for lowercase character, and this is the prototype, and returns 1 if c is a lowercase. It means that if the parameter passed to the function is a lowercase, the function should return 1. Otherwise, it should return 0. So if it is any other character aside from lowercase, it should return 0. So what do we need to do here? We need to set an if statement. Right? Here we can set an if statement. We need to check if c here is a lowercase. So I will need to say if here, I will say if c is greater than or equals to what? Or equals to a. I'm starting from a, right? I'm checking from what? Any value from a up to what? Up to z, right? And also, right? That is what and here. If you're dealing with and, this is and. And what? And c is less than or equals to what? Or equals to z. So as you can see here, I've now targeted everything from a to z. If c is greater than or equals to a, and also c is less than or equals to z. So now I've targeted what? The entire 26 alphabet. But as you can see, it is what? A lowercase. So it is only going to check for lowercase. So if this condition is true, what should happen? It says we should return 1, right? So I'll just say return, and then I will add 1 here. And then it says what again? It says returns 0 otherwise. So that is the else part. So else, simply return a 0. That's also what the question says. Okay, so here, let me document my Betty. What's my function name? Is lower, right? So is lower, right? So I'll just say, checks for lowercase character. Right? And then it is returning something, right? So return. So in this case, I will just say 1 or 0. On success, it is 1. On failure, it is 0, right? So here, I'll just do this. So when you look at this here, I have what? The function is taking a parameter c. So I need to tell Betty what this c does as well. So here, after the function name, I need to create a space here for this. So to explain a parameter, you need to what? To use the at character here. So at, and then the variable name is what? Is c, right? So I will say at c, then full quote. So you tell Betty what this character does, what this parameter does here. So in c, I will just say parameter to be checked. Right? So I'm done with this. So here I can now exit. Right? So I need to create the test file for this. So I need to copy this. Oops. What is this? All right. So copy. So I'll say vi. That is, the file name is what? 3main.c, right? So 3main.c. So I'll paste this here. I don't know why anytime I paste, I need to add the hash I here. It's not copying including that. So hash I here. Wow. Hash I. All right. So what's the next thing we need to do? The next thing is we need to compile the program now, right? Or first, let's run Betty. So Betty on our 3 is lower, right? Yeah, so as you can see, Betty is fine. So we can now proceed and compile the program. So as you can see, it has been compiled. So let's run the compiled file. 3 is lower. So as you can see, we got 0, 1, 1. So let's explain this. So when you look at this, this is where the function is being called, right? And what is passed to the function? The character h, right? As you can see, this h is in caps. So this is not part of what we are checking for. We've already set a condition that if it is not a lowercase, it should just return a 0. So that's why we are having 0 here. Do you get it? So, and here, what is passed to the function is small letter 0. So it means that what? This is a 0. And what is our function going to return? Our function is going to return 1. So that's why we are having what? A 1 here. And we look at the other case where the function is being called, which is this case here, is what? 108. So this 108 here is the ASCII code of a character, right? So let's try to find out what 108 is representing on the ASCII sheet. So let me just say ASCII sheet. Yeah. So let me open this. All right. So we are looking for what? 108, right? We are trying to find out 108 is the ASCII code of what character. So let's look for 108. Where is 108? This is 108. Did you see it where my cursor is? Did you see it? 108 here. 108. It is the ASCII code of what? Of small letter L. So it is the ASCII code of what? Small letter L. So small letter L is being represented with 108 here. So, and it is a small letter. So it means that our function is going to return 1. So that's why we are having a 1 here. Okay? That's why we're having a 1 here. Do you get it? So don't forget to add, commit, and push to your GitHub repository, and you can run your checks. So we are stopping the video here. In the next video, we are going to continue from task 4. So thank you very much. We'll meet in our next session.